And a very good evening to you. I am Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Minister of Labour, Social Security and the Third Sector, the Honourable Colin Jordan. Minister, thank you so much for joining us on the programme again.
Thank you very much, Lisa. It's good to be here.
You're welcome. Now, this evening we will try to examine government's plans to revitalise the National Insurance Scheme, among some other issues. But starting with the NIS, the Island Social Security System was established on June 5th, 1967, as a way of providing a safety net to workers in several areas as well as their dependents. Is the scheme still serving that purpose?
Yes, it is. This scheme, the National Insurance Scheme, still provides that basic level of support for persons who have spent their lives working and contributing to the scheme, to the fund, and it provides them with the means to live in their post-working life period. It also provides some benefits, not all of which were around at the time when the National Insurance Fund was established. So there is unemployment, there is severance, sickness, maternity. There are a number of other, employment injury is another one, a number of other benefits that have come along in the period since it was established. But the fundamental reason for the establishment of the fund remains the reason why the fund exists today, to provide that income floor, that minimum financial support for persons who have worked, who are now at the stage where they're no longer working and they need to continue to live in this country. The social security system is one where the country comes together, contributes, so that those who reach that stage of life are able to enjoy benefits without having to exert themselves in a way that they won't be able to.
No, the NIS manages several funds, the largest of which is the National Insurance Fund and its portfolio, which boasts assets of around $4 billion. And this is where the focus lies. One of the key findings of the 17th Actuarial Report is the fact that even though the fund is not in crisis now, the country does run the risk of depleting the funds between 2034 and 2041, not a long time away at all. Now, urgent reforms are therefore needed, and government has looked at increasing the age of retirement now to 68 years old. And I want to go back just a little bit. One of the main reasons for this is obviously because the population is in decline. Simply put, less people are being born and people are aging. Therefore, less people are contributing to the fund. Going back a little, in 2006, the pensionable age was 65 and a half years old. In 2014, it was raised to 66 and a half years old. Then just 4 years later, in 2018, it was raised to 67. And our government is saying the best option in 2023 is to raise the retirement age to 68.
The government is saying that that is one of a suite of measures. So that if we were relying only on retirement, on pensionable age, then we will not be able to stop at 68 if that were the only measure that we were going to take. We'd said from last year, 2022, in our extensive consultations, we recognize, and I think the country recognized, those who we engage with in groups, those who we engage with in town hall meetings, that there was no single measure that would allow us to properly revitalize the fund so that we got an additional 25 to 30 years in terms of its life. Now, the extension of the pensionable age is but one of those measures. And the advantage of acting early. Now, you said that we needed urgent action. We could have decided we didn't want all the noise, and we could have deferred it to some other time, or maybe to some other administration. We took the decision that as a responsible government, we needed to act once we were in possession of the information. Now, the information said, as you properly and correctly said, somewhere between 2034 and 2041. Some of us will not be around at that point in terms of in political life, but we took the decision that we would not postpone it. We would not make the matter of revitalizing the fund somebody else's issue to address. We decided, based on all of the consultations, based on the modeling and the work of the core group and the feedback from the working group and the advisory group, took a decision to implement a suite of measures. Having that suite of measures is what allows us to be able, even though we are moving the pensionable age, it is being moved over a period that ends in 2034, so that it goes to 67 and a half in 2028, and then it goes to 68 in 2034. So we were able to stretch it out, so to speak, over that period of time, because we were using other measures as well, in addition to the extension of the pensionable age. So number of contributions to qualify, the amount of the best years for calculating the actual pension payment. We did a number of things that allow us not to have to address the matter of pensionable age in too drastic a manner.
Do you understand the public outcry on why persons don't want to work until they're older?
Yes, I do. And it is because from the time you start to work, so let me personalize this. From the time I start to work, you start to think about, or I start to think about retirement. And principally, and I'm being personal about this, I've heard, and I continue to hear, persons who retire able to go on cruises and do the things that they say they haven't been able to do during their working lives. So that we all look forward to that period when we do not have to, as we say, go back to the grind, where every Monday morning you have to get in for 8 or 8:30. And so persons look forward to that period of time. Now, in 1967, the space between pensionable age and what was the average life expectancy was 8 years. That is to say, the understanding was that for 8 years, you could enjoy not having to be doing the grind, not going to work. You can enjoy that period of retirement with support, financial support from the National Insurance Fund. At this point, the retirement age, the pensionable age, is 67. The average life expectancy is 78. So right now we're at the point where 11 years. Now, we are not saying that we do not want to increase the number of years that people can enjoy a season of their lives where they're not working in the regular 9 to 5, 8 to 4:30 kind of a situation. But we're saying that if persons are living longer, the society has a responsibility not to stop giving them that pension at any particular age. That pension has to continue until once the person is alive. So as the life expectancy increases, it means that persons have to be supported for a longer period of time, which is what we want. But I understand that persons instinctively, a change in the pensionable age will instinctively cause a response that says, oh dear, I have to work longer. And I understand that. The entire cabinet understands that. We have taken this step not to deprive, but to make sure that the fund is able to support everybody, the entire population, when the time comes for them to be able to enjoy their retirement or their pensionable period, whether it is for 11 years or 12 or 13, as we hope it will increase over time.
And I understand that you're following the data and the trends that you have regarding life expectancy. However, I scan the obituary notices and I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing people barely reaching 66, 67, if they're lucky to. And then if they do, they're not living much longer after that.
Right. Now, the obituary pages would not be sufficient data for us to make decisions.
Of course.
The obituary pages, besides showing, I lost a young lady in my constituency, and I still think about it. That's the reason why I mention it here. 26 years old, right? We just had a funeral a couple of days ago for a 4-year-old. Now, those are things I don't even like to think about. But when we are planning and planning into the future, we have to use the data that we have. The data speaks to averages, so that while there is a funeral for a 4-year-old, I've also gone within the last month and a half to visit a centenarian. Last year, earlier this year, around the middle of the year, in June, another centenarian in Mangrove. Late last year, a centenarian in Upper Castle. No, I've only mentioned the ones that I know that I'm interacting with, so that while there are younger people who pass, there are also persons who are living. And to be fair to those of us who have to make policy, we have to look at the trends as supported by the numbers. So average life expectancy is done by averaging the entire population. So it cannot just be based on what you see, say, in a 6-month period in the newspaper. And what you see in a 6-month period in the newspaper does not speak to those persons who are celebrating their 90th birthday, or their 91st birthday, or their 95th birthday, the person who died at 97. Those that jump out at us, those that jump out at me, are the ones who do not make it to those good golden years. So I understand how persons, including myself, will react, because I just mentioned to you, 4 years old, 26 years old, those are etched in my brain because we respond to those things. We don't respond in the same way when we see a gentleman at 92 or a lady at 98. We don't remember how many of those are in the obituaries, but we will remember that we saw some 40s, some 50s. And I'll tell you this, and this is not meant to make light of this situation, but when I see people in the newspaper around my age, those are the ones that probably jump out even more, because they speak to your own mortality. And one of the reasons why that impacts on a change in pensionable age is because people like me then begin to say, well, if that person is my age and they've died, but I start to wonder if I'm going to reach pensionable age.
Exactly.
It speaks to your mortality. So I understand it is both a real and an emotional response. I understand it because I have a similar response.
Now, outside of pushing the pensionable age to 68, government is also seeking
68 in 2034.
In 2034, government is also seeking to increase the age at which persons can become eligible for an earlier reduced pension, starting in 2025. So not too far away. It will be raised from 60 to 61 with increases thereafter.
Right. So that goes along with increasing a pensionable age. It also goes along with an increasing average life expectancy, so that the date for being able to claim early retirement then is expected to follow a similar pattern, because it says that persons are living longer, are working longer. So that movement is almost a natural corollary to the change in the pensionable age. But it increases to 61, as you said, in 2025. Then it goes to 62 in 2028, and it reaches 63 in 2031. So that it is not done all in one fell swoop. We've sought, by using a suite of measures, a range of measures, a number of measures, to make sure that the impact of a single one does not have to be as harsh as it otherwise might have to be. And that is the reason for that change as well. But
then you're pushing the age of early retirement a little closer to the age of actual retirement again.
Right. And, there are lots and lots of Barbadians who ask themselves, as a matter of fact, on the same Friday, a gentleman asked the question, well, he said he doesn't want to retire. Now, Barbados does not have retirement age. I need to say that. Barbados does not have a retirement age. This is pensionable age. So this is not to say that a person, if they had the means to, could not decide to retire at 55 or some other age of their own choosing. This is the age at which the national insurance scheme then kicks in to provide the pension support, that financial support. So this is not to say that this is the earliest at which a person can retire, but it is the earliest at which a person will be able to then receive that financial support
from
in the form, in the form of a pension. And we remember also that one of the measures to incentivize persons working for longer is that we're increasing the percentage by which the pension will be increased if the worker defers taking the pension. And that is also an option that people have been asking. I want to work longer, but there's no incentive for me to work longer. Am I going to get a larger pension? I can continue to pay. Am I going to get a larger pension? That is one of the measures as well to incentivize persons to defer taking their pension and getting an increased percentage added on for deferring their pension.
Another measure is that there will be an increase in the number of contributions required for a person to become eligible for pension. You're moving from 500 weeks, which is approximately 10 years, to 750 weeks, which is approximately 15 years. So you're expecting me to make 5 more years of contributions.
That is correct. Now, I'm of the view that this is eminently reasonable. And I say that based on the following. Most persons will start to work. So again, we use averages. People start work at 16, 17. Most persons will start to work between 20 and 25. Between 20 and 25. If you work for 15 years and contribute for 15 years, by the time you reach 40, you have already qualified for a pension. Most persons will work into their 60s, so that 15 years of contribution is not unreasonable in my view, is not unreasonable in the view of the cabinet. Even if you start to work at 30, for example, so a person may decide, look, I want to do all my studying and I want to go right up to PhD. I don't start to work until I'm 30. That person with 750 contributions qualifies at 45. At 45 years old, that person qualifies for a pension. I don't think it is an unreasonable length of time for contributing, particularly because what we're talking about, the National Insurance Fund, is a social security fund. It means that all of us contribute. All of us contribute to help those who will receive pensions at the point in time when they become eligible for pensions, either at the regular pensionable age or if they took the earlier age. All of us come together to do this. It is a socialized scheme. And so I think I would want to contribute. I mean, I would expect that workers would contribute for 30, 35, 40 years. There are lots of people who start to work at 20 or before. And when they're 60, they'll say to you, I've been working for 40 years. And that sounds like a whole long time. Yeah. 40 years. We're saying you'll qualify after 15 years. But even moving from 500 weeks to 750 weeks, so approximately 10 years to approximately 15, that again, because we are using a number of measures together, we did not have to move from 500 to 750 in one fell swoop. We increase by year only by 30 weeks, so that you don't, to add an additional year, you don't even have to work and contribute for the full year. 30 weeks per year is the increase. So from 500 to 530 to 560 to 590, so that as persons move along, they're not going to be disadvantaged. Now, I want to emphasize that persons are not going to be disadvantaged as they work additional years, because the requirement increases by 30 weeks every 52 weeks. So by 30 out of the 52. So even for persons who are seasonal workers, that will also facilitate those persons. But we believe that 750 weeks or 15 years of contribution for most persons is a fair amount of time for persons to qualify. And that's something that we also heard in the town hall meetings. That also came up in town hall meetings, because there are persons who were not pleased that there are some who can work for 10 years, contribute for 10 years, 5 of those at the maximum, and just disappear. But at some point in time in their lives, can come back and say, I have qualified. It is not fair to the rest of us. You know, let us, and we have not said that you ought to be contributing for all of your working life in order to qualify. We want people to contribute for all of their working lives, but we are not insisting on that. We are saying 15 of those years. I qualify.
I hear you talking about fairness and us being all in this together. However, you as a member of parliament, you can serve 2 terms and by 50 be pensionable. How is that fair to the general population that you are saying, oh, you must work till 60?
All right, so let me say something first before I come back to the fairness, because that is a difficult question only because you're speaking to me as a politician, right? As a minister who is in that category. And what I say, I know may come over as self-serving. So I'm going to be, this I'm going to say. Both Prime Minister and myself, and I believe some other cabinet colleagues, believes that that age of, the age when we are eligible will have to increase. I do not know what it will increase to or what it could increase to, but we believe so. What I also say is that the Parliamentary Reform Commission, they are going to be addressing all of these matters, and they will be taking into consideration the views of the general public, because they will be engaging with the public as they work through what Parliament should look like, what should be the privilege, well, in diplomatic language, they talk about privileges and immunities, but I mean, what are the attendant pieces that should come along with a parliamentary system in the 3rd decade of the 21st century? So they'll be looking at that. I have to be fair, though, and even at the risk of sounding self-serving, I'll say the following, and I'll say it because those who know me know me to be an honest person. Well, I said 2 things. One is that ministers contribute to their pensions, right? So every month there's a deduction that goes toward the pension. So that is we contribute to that. We also contribute to national insurance pension, as a matter of fact, at a rate that is higher than an employee. We contribute at over 17% because we are taken as self-employed. That's how the legislation is. So we contribute both to the pension that people talk about. We also contribute very heavily to the National Insurance Fund. And that's compulsory. Nobody can opt out of that. But I have to say to you that when a person becomes a member of parliament and a minister, I have become tainted. I've become tainted to the extent that, and I'm using no other people's experience, those who've gone before me, when I'm no longer a minister and I'm looking for a job, I have to face the reality. And I'm saying this because I was a former employer as well. I work for persons managing their businesses. Employers are careful in who they employ because of the message that it can send. And I must admit that I only have come across these kinds of situations since I've been involved. So this is about maybe 5, 6, 7 years that I've been very, very close to this, and recognize that there are persons who employers tend to shy away from because of their political affiliation, because it could give the impression that the employer or the company has a particular political bias. And so there are persons who, when they are finished public office, find it very difficult to be able to earn. Now, I used to think that those who were lawyers or doctors could easily go back to private practice. I'm neither doctor or lawyer, and in Parliament now, we have a composition of persons who I think is maybe one of the best mixes that we have had in our parliamentary system for quite some time. And that's a mix of persons from all kinds of professional backgrounds, all kinds of job backgrounds. But what I've found out is that even for attorneys and physicians, their clients have, over the period of time, gone on to other physicians or attorneys. And it is not an automatic, even for them, it is not automatic for them to just drop back into a private practice and start to earn again. So that may sound self-serving. It is my honest view. It is the reality that we will all face. All of that said, and all of that considered, I still believe that the age should increase from 50. I still believe that the age should increase from 50.
I just wanted to hear you say it.
Yeah, I've spoken to the Prime Minister about it, and she is also of the view, as a matter of fact, I think she held the view, before I held the view, that the age should increase from 50. Now, I am not binding the cabinet, because it is the cabinet ultimately that will make those kinds of decisions, and I'm not binding the hands of the Parliamentary Reform Commission, because they are discussing these matters, will be addressing these matters, and will make proposals that we will all have to go through and make decisions on.
All right, Minister, we'll take a short break. Still a lot more to discuss. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
Hi, I'm Carl Padmore, Public Relations Officer of the Sanitation Service Authority. Maybe you would have witnessed roadkill, or you would have passed the highway or a byway and seen a dead animal. We want you to report it to one of the numbers coming across the screen. We'll come and we'll remove that dead animal. Also, if you have an animal who has passed away at your home, we prefer you to do it the legal way than to throw it into the gully, contaminate the gully, and then we have problems. Barbados, we love our environment. Let us care our environment. Therefore, the correct way to dispose of dead animals, call the number coming across the screen. We are here to help you. The SSA cares. Clean thoughts, clean living, clean nation.
Welcome back as we continue our discussion with the Minister of Labour, Social Security and the Third Sector, the Honourable Colin Jordan, and look at the revitalisation of the National Insurance Scheme. Now, Minister, taking a further look at the measures, one of the ways the scheme will be able to diversify its portfolio is through an agreement with the Central Bank of Barbados, where the fund will have access to $40 million a year to invest abroad. That's a lot of money.
Yes, it is. And it is in keeping with good investment policy and good investment practice. One of the challenges that the National Insurance Scheme has had over the years is the ability to diversify its portfolio of investments. We're investing for the long term. So most of our funds are for pensions. These are long-term investments. Good investment policy says to a person, you don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Because as the deputy chair said a few days ago, if that basket drops, every egg is broken. Diversification, some here, some there. You're doing investments in different areas, in different kinds of instruments, in different geographical locations. And it is just for to make sure that the risk is spread. You don't want to run into losses that can destroy the entire scheme. Now, diversification is necessary for one principal reason. Not every investment works out. And that is something that I think all of us need to come to grips with. Not every investment works out. There's something called risk. So you put your money some here, some there. As a matter of fact, I know people who, in terms of when they're keeping money at home, they put it in different places.
Older people especially.
Older people do that.
Yeah.
And all older people, eminently sensible. They do it because if somebody comes into the house and they search through this bureau, which is what we used to say,
Yes.
the bureau, pull out these drawers, they may get that, but they ain't gonna get the one that maybe in the larder. And that's how older people thought. And that is exactly the principle. So that if, God forbid, there is some negative outcome somewhere, you want your investment spread. The most famous, probably the most famous investor in the world, Warren Buffett, has not succeeded with every single investment, not every single one, but you invest in such a way that overall you are making gains. Spreading your risk and spreading your investments then becomes very necessary. We cannot be over concentrated in Barbados. That is not a good investment strategy. And so over the years, there's been difficulty in being able to invest overseas because of a lack of foreign reserves.
Yeah.
Now, when we came to office, one of the things we knew we had to do was to address the matter of foreign reserves. We had to. And so we took some very difficult decisions, but they were all intended both to save the dollar, the currency and the peg to the US dollar, and address the matter of our foreign currency reserves. Now, if we don't have foreign reserves, nobody, the central bank cannot give to the national insurance scheme the permission to take money out. That money will be needed to buy flour, to buy cheese, to buy oil, to buy gasoline, all those things that are absolutely necessary for a country to function. So that the national insurance scheme did not have that ability because it did not have the permission, because we did not have the foreign reserves. We as a government we've taken a decision that we need to build our foreign reserves. We are now at the point where the central bank is comfortable that it can give us the permission to invest overseas. And those investments overseas will be, as I said before, to diversify the portfolio, to make sure that we are spreading our risk, one, but also that we have the opportunity for even better returns on the investment. And that is the reason.
No, for several years, it has been a challenge to get more self-employed persons to make contributions.
Yeah.
But along with the suite of measures that you do have, you're looking to make it easier, more convenient for these persons to make contributions.
Yes. That is an important measure in the whole suite. Very important. One of the things that persons said in the town hall meetings and in the stakeholder group meetings, we need to get everybody, like I keep focusing on the fact that this is a social security system. So all of us are in it together, whether people feel it is a buzzword or not, it is a social security scheme. Those who are self-employed often have the challenge, and I just give them a little bit of background. When you start to pay national insurance, and you pay for a quarter, and you pay for a second quarter, and then you miss a third quarter, the system as currently set up assumes that you are in arrears. And so it will say you owe, based on what you've paid in the 2 quarters, this is what you owe. And by the way, this is the penalty because you haven't paid on time. And this is the interest that is racking up. It does not take into consideration that that person might have been an entertainer who had done some good work during Carnival, first quarter, and who, leading into June, may have gone through a rough patch, but then in the third quarter, July, August, September, may have done pretty well, contributed, but then leading up to Christmas, nothing much, just a little bit at the end of December during the Christmas period. The system currently structured is a little bit unfair to them.
Right.
It does not take into account their circumstances. The one that's close to me because of my work background, the taxi driver. The taxi driver. So the hotel worker, the room attendant, the food and beverage server is there all during the year. The slow periods, you might be working 3 days a week, but you're still contributing. The taxi driver, some periods of the year, September, October sometimes, April, May, June, nothing. Only enough to put petrol back in the car, and sometimes only enough to do repairs. All of us, anybody with a vehicle knows that as soon as the vehicle seems to know when you have a little money in your hand.
That's right.
And something, so a taxi driver needs to be accommodated. The measure that we are taking and currently working through, it is right now in the test phase and we're about to roll it out. It allows the taxi driver, the entertainer, any other self-employed persons, and there are a lot of young people now who call themselves or who are properly classified as gig entrepreneurs. And entrepreneurship is something that we've been encouraging. Anybody who's an entrepreneur knows that funds do not come in a straight line. Even for the mason or the carpenter, you work on a house now and you got good money for 2 months. Then you sometimes have to wait a month or 2 for the next job. This system will allow for you to make contributions when you have the money. There will be a formulation that allows the National Insurance Scheme to convert those contributions into earnings. Benefits are paid based on earnings. Paying a contribution does not kind of say the earnings, yes. and we need to spread the earnings. So the National Insurance Scheme will take those contributions and convert them into earnings. We'll make some assumptions to say, well, okay, this $400 that you paid in today, this represents X number of weeks in the recent past, and spread it over a period of time. And the contributor will be told this is what it allows with respect to possible benefits. The intention is that those benefits, those contributions, can be paid through your bank. A check can be sent, cash can be taken, eventually through the government's portal, Easy Pay. So to make it easy, so people can do it from their phones, however they want to do it, persons can make those contributions, and then National Insurance communicates back to say, this is what your contributions look like, this is what your entitlements are as a result. The issue has been the completion of forms. Now, we used to have pink forms and blue forms, and every quarter you got to sit down and put in each of these either 12 or 13 spaces an amount. For people who work for themselves, it's tedious. It's tedious. Mm-hmm. Those who work for others sometimes don't see it. But for these folk who are self-employed, genuinely self-employed, that is a tedious thing. And you always defer it to some more convenient time. But you're hustling. Because for a self-employed person, for an entrepreneur, life becomes a hustle. And you never get back to it. We want to make it easier, and we believe that by making it easier, along with doing significant public education, that we can get more of the self-employed into the National Insurance Scheme as contributors so that their futures are also secured.
There was also a situation over the last few years where employers were deducting monies from their employees and not paying it in to the NIS. Are you still seeing that on a concerning level?
It still concerns us. As a matter of fact, anytime it happens, it is concerning. So even if it were not as huge an issue as before, it is still concerning. Not as huge because we have done a number of things, some amnesties, and we have put more people out into the field. We're going to increase those numbers of persons going out into the field. We are going to be tougher, and I'm using this medium to put everybody on notice that the National Insurance Scheme is going to be much tougher about how it uses the legislation to make sure that people pay. If you deduct contributions from a worker and do not pay in, that is stealing. Now, if you don't pay your portion, that is breaking the law. You may not call it stealing, but if you take money from somebody under the pretense that you're going to be sending it into national insurance and you don't, you're stealing their money. We're going to be much more aggressive where that is concerned. We're going to do it along with education because the two have to go hand in hand. There are some people who need some reminders and some people who may need some kicks, and we're going to be doing both. So that side of compliance, we have already for this year because this year, or in the first 6 months of this year, we have done more visits and more all kinds of visits to employers than we did for the entire 2022. But that's going to intensify, in the process of being intensified. And we are going to be going after those who deduct and don't pay, those who are not paying the correct amount. We are also going to be going after those persons who treat employees as if they're self-employed, and therefore get away, they feel, from their obligation to support the social security system in the country. We are going to be going after those persons very aggressively while doing our educational campaign.
Which we were seeing in the construction sector especially.
Yes, and you may recall, and the public may recall, that a few months ago I went to Parliament.
Yes.
And the public contracts, the labor clauses, we established labor clauses, and we started with those contractors who work with government. So those are the clauses, the rates of pay, the fact that they must be treating workers as employees, and that they must be contributing to the social security. Those who are engaged in government contracts, public contracts, benefiting from the public purse, so to speak, the national insurance, while verifying those, we'll also be dealing with others who may not be in close contact with government in terms of working and, and receiving the benefit of a government contract. But we have started the work to make sure that persons do what is their moral responsibility.
Minister, throughout this discussion, I've heard you speak about the population being in decline. Now, women like myself would love to have another child. There are no incentives for us to have more children. And 3 months maternity leave is simply not cutting it.
Lisa, we have...
You're breathing deep.
Yeah, I'm breathing deep because this is a matter that has engaged our attention. And it engaged our attention even before the 17th actuarial review, even before the preliminary numbers for the 2020 census, which show the decline, even before the work of the National Population Commission. Now, I breathe deep because we are, and this is just yesterday that I was reviewing a draft cabinet paper. There were two things that cabinet agreed to have studied in just before the pandemic came. One was the establishment of paternity leave, implementing a paternity leave policy. And the second was extending maternity leave. So we've been addressing both of those matters. COVID took our attention away somewhat, and we've now completed some assessments. And I will say to you that what now is also on the table is an extended period of parental leave. Now that, let me be clear to say, that has not gone to the cabinet, but it is something that is being discussed because out of the studies that have been done, when cabinet approved the policy in principle, cabinet asked that studies be done. The actuarial study has been done, and one of the suggestions is that we could move to parental leave for a period that even extends beyond the current maternity, plus the increase we were looking at, plus the paternity, even beyond that.
You're skirting. Give me, in terms of some time frames that you're looking at.
So we are looking at adding at least 1 month.
So we go to 4 months.
Right. So a month for paternity, 3 months for maternity. But we're also looking at increasing maternity by a month. Now, all these things cost. One of the suggestions that we are now considering is the possibility of even going to 6 months of a total parental leave.
Total parental leave.
Yes. Now, that is based on the recommendations that have come to me. So I have not yet gone to the cabinet because that's something that I'm working through to decide what I will propose to the cabinet for cabinet to consider.
Just to be clear, when you say parental leave, you mean in terms of both parents splitting that leave?
Both parents splitting and making decisions as to what is most beneficial for them. So I'll give an example. And This may not be very, very common knowledge, but in our research, we've come across couples, parents, who suggests to us that it would be more beneficial. No, the parents want a parent to be with the new child, but it may be more beneficial for the mother to go back to work after 2 or 3 or 4 months and the father continue on before they release the child to a daycare, for example. That is what we have heard. And there are persons who would like to have the option, parents, the two parents, of deciding how to split that leave. And so that is where parental leave comes in. Obviously, there are going to have to be certain safeguards. So it cannot be a situation where one person decides, I'm taking all, you're not getting any. And there are a number of things that we have to do administratively. But the principle of extended leave is one that is occupying my attention right now as we speak. It has attracted the attention of the cabinet just before COVID. We've asked for the studies to be done. We have the studies on my desk. I have the study at the top of my files, and we are pursuing that. And what I feel pretty confident about is that there will be, in the not too distant future, an increase in leave. An increase in leave. If it is just an additional to the maternity plus paternity, or if it is parental, there will be an increase in leave. And we hope that that will go, again, maybe we need a suite of measures in terms of encouraging ladies to have more children, those who want to have more children. But we are looking at the matter of leave. And government has already, through the cabinet, agreed to increases in leave based on what the studies show to be feasible.
Given the situation that we're in at this moment, from where you sit, how soon would you like to see that leave extension implemented?
I'd like to see that before the end of this year, the calendar year. I'd like to see that before the end of the calendar year. Okay. That is my intention.
Minister, I have you spending there for just a second. Well, moving on now from NIS related matters, and I want to concentrate on labor issues. During the first half of the year, we would have had several protest actions, whether it be sick-outs, persons striking, etc. What is the industrial relations climate like at this time?
The industrial relations climate, ever since sometime during the COVID period, has been a bit tense. It is not, in my view, at the stage where we would say it is, it is not at fever pitch, not at boiling point. It is nowhere near there. So that we hear of issues from time to time. What we also know, though, is that below the surface, there are some challenges. And from where I sit, so this is not an empirical study, but I'm just saying that from where I sit, I am getting the impression that there needs to be more dialogue between management of organizations and workers in the organization. A lot of the issues that end up coming to the Labor Department, that end up coming to me, and I have to deal with these from time to time. The public doesn't see all the things that I'm involved in. So sometimes people believe that, the Minister of Labor, what's the Minister of Labor doing? Every time I put out a fire, I'm not going to the public. Because not every fire everybody needs to know about. You deal with issues and you try to resolve issues. Many of the issues that come to us stem, in my view, from a breakdown in communication. A breakdown in communication between those who lead and those who are led. If we are to get past this situation, if we're going to improve our industrial relations, there has to be a recognition that workers are human beings. We have to get back to the golden rule. Treat people how you would want to be treated yourself. Engage with people. We've spent a fortune over the years on education, so that this is not smart people leading not so smart people. These are smart people leading smart people. And so we have to engage each other in a respectful way so that we can get solutions for business challenges, so that we can share, leaders can share with workers what is going on in the business, what the challenges are. And that communication, that dialogue is something that needs to happen. There also needs to be respect for the workers' representatives so that the business about knowing that the workers have a representative, but you're going to go to individual workers without engaging representatives, that's a no-no. Barbados has always practiced good industrial relations policy from the level of policy making, from the level of government. You'll recall that the founder of the Barbados Labour Party was also the founder of the Barbados Workers Union. There was always the understanding that workers were and are important and have to be accorded the respect that is due. Their representatives also have to be accorded that respect. And so we expect that there will be greater engagement of employers with workers, but also employers with workers' representatives.
You kind of hinted at it just now, but there is the belief in some quarters that you have been too silent and you're not as active as you should be. How do you respond?
I respond to say that if you're comparing me to predecessors, that may be the case. I cannot agree that I've not been active. We have done quite a bit over the years, even the COVID period taken into consideration, because there was quite a lot that went on there with protocols and trying to keep the ship of state afloat during that period. But we have done things like the Shaw regulations. We've put those in place. We have implemented for the first time in our history a national minimum wage, which persons said could not be done. We have done some work with the public contracts, labor clauses legislation that is under review at this time. We are also working as we speak on the protection of wages legislation. We are working as we speak on trade union recognition legislation. As we speak, we are working both on, we're in an advanced stage on developing rules for the Employment Rights Tribunal. We kind of reformed how that tribunal worked by doing case management, which allowed us to put a dent in the backlog. But we've also been working with the ILO on making some more fundamental changes to allow us to be able to have a better throughput of cases. So quite a lot of work has been taking place, along with all of the negotiations and the conciliations that I have to do. And those take time, those take effort, those take energy, sometimes whole days, sometimes into the night. So, you will not have seen me in the most recent or heard my voice in the most recent scenario. But on that night, that Friday night, into the Saturday morning, I would not have slept. Because there is a discussion going on and you're trying to reach an agreement. Now, when that agreement is reached, I didn't come to the public. That's a dispute between a union and an employer, and sufficient that it is settled and that we've made sure that the agreement has been implemented and people have gone back to work. So our concern is that the business remains viable and people have jobs. And once those are considered, we move on to the next thing. But from time to time, I do speak to the public like I am speaking to you now to address various matters. But the Labour Ministry, the Ministry of Labour, Social Security and the Third Sector is moving along. We've spent quite a lot of time on the governance, addressing the matter of the governance of the National Insurance Scheme. And we're pretty far advanced. As a matter of fact, the bill that passed both the House of Assembly and the Senate is a result of a lot of the work that we have been doing. So we have been busy and we have been doing work, and I will accept any criticism. People know that I'm not afraid of accepting criticism, and if it is that the public feels that I ought to speak more frequently, then I will.
Minister, thank you for taking the time to speak with us this evening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much too, Lisa.
You're most
Thank you.
welcome. That was the Minister of Labour, Social Security and the Third Sector, the Honourable Colin Jordan. I am Lisa Lord. Thank you so much for watching. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.